Ladies and welcome to another episode of Media Watch. I'm your host, Dr. Savi. And every week we get together with some fantastic guests and we discuss the news of the week around the world. We take one headline, we follow that by a number of headlines, and we look at Sikh news in particular and any local events that are taking place. This week I've got a fantastic with me, and it's really great that he's come, and it's difficult to get hold of him. He is Amandeep Singh, and he is a qualified, I don't know if I got the name right, qualified parliamentary candidate, is that right?
Well, approved parliamentary candidate, but
right.
same thing.
Brilliant. It's so good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
I know you're a very busy person, and I know at the moment you're going through the process of actually, hopefully being a parliamentary candidate next year for possibly the Conservatives?
Absolutely, definitely for the Conservatives. We'll be standing for election next year. So May the 7th, I will be there hoping to get onto the green benches. Baki jo Guru nu manzoor hai ji.
Absolutely, and we've got some guests next week as well. We're trying our best to get them doubly confirmed, and that will be the just make sure everything's balanced. A couple of candidates who are also fantastic that they're Sardars, and they were parliamentary candidates, prospective parliamentary candidates for Labour, just to make sure that everything is fine. Let's start off with the first part of the programme where we talk about the main headline, and we have hot in the news at the moment. And this week we're also going to be looking at some of the papers as well from this week. We have a figure that says net migration rose by 260,000 up to the year of June this year. That's an increase of 78,000 on the previous year. Now, the way they calculate this is by taking away the number of people leaving the country from the number of people coming in.
That's
so
right.
It kind of balances out, or does it? Now, the Prime Minister, David Cameron, has said he hopes to get net migration down to at least 100,000. Some people are saying that maybe he won't make that by the time he gets to the election. But clearly, according to the data, 583,000 people, might as well say 500,000, immigrated to the UK last year, and an increase of 45,000 from the EU and 30,000 from outside. Now, I wonder if this is purely just a distraction, rather than focusing on the real issues about the NHS or how we fund public services.
Sure, well, look, I think rather than being a distraction, I think it's a very core issue. And the reason why it is a core issue is because, as you said, the NHS is important, the economy is important, and of course public services are important. And of course, immigration in such high numbers has a huge impact on how the government is able to deliver services in the NHS, public services, schools for our children, care for our elderly, and of course healthcare for the sick.
There's another argument that says that as we're coming out of recession, whatever that means and what figure you believe in terms of percentages, the reason why people want to come here is not to be a burden on benefits or whatever people are talking about, is because the country is becoming more wealthy and it needs resources, and we know that people who do come in, immigrants, whatever you want to call them, do contribute to the kind of the well-being of the country, not only in terms of culture, but also in terms of how the country becomes richer, in terms of generating more revenue, more opportunities, becoming entrepreneurs, all those kind of great things, all the energy that they bring with them.
Well, of course, look, we always want to attract the brightest and the best in the world, because we are a country that's always been moving forward. And it's not only been because of indigenous people, but because of immigrants. I mean, look at our own community itself. We've come here, we've made a name for ourselves, and we punch above our weight. Of course, we want the best and the brightest to come here. But at the same time, you also have to realize that we have a lot of immigration from Eastern Europe. And what that is doing effectively is, A, keeping wages down, and in some ways, of course, also creating competition for local people here that have already been here perhaps for far longer. Or
cynics might say that because the popularity of, I'm going to use that term, try our best, we seem to come up with that term again and again, which is UKIP. Is it the fact that the Tories are moving more towards the UKIP agenda, moving more towards the right, in order to attract some of that vote kind of grouping that we seem to have,
Well, I don't think so.
Was that too cynical?
No, I don't think that so at all. Because if you look at recent trends, UKIP have been garnering more of the traditional working class Labour vote, as we've seen in the recent past, for example, even in Rochester. So I don't think that so at all that is true. In fact, the Conservative Party has been at the forefront of making sure that immigration works for this country rather than uncontrolled migration, which we've seen in the past when Labour has been in power. It really does not work. For example, Indian students wanting to come here and work, to come here and learn and then go on to work perhaps, there is no limit to that. As long as you're a genuine student from India, you're welcome here to come and study and make a life.
And there are success stories of people that have come here from India. They've either studied for an MBA, then they've gone into work for a big bank or whatever, and they've done really, really well. And even people from IIT over in India, they've come over here and they've had opportunities as well. So
that's right.
And I mean, I think it's a real mixed bag, the whole immigration thing. I mean, we've got a couple of papers here, for recent ones. Do you want to share with us? I mean, one of the things you mentioned earlier on was about the EU migrants. Are they going to take their benefits away after 6 months if they haven't had a job, you know?
Well, look, I think it is key, because if you look at countries like Croatia, for example,
right.
Now Croatia is an associate EU country,
okay.
But if, for example, I as a British citizen wanted to go and work in Croatia, I would have to supply the Croatian government with a proof of where I was going to stay, health insurance, and of course a guarantee of a job. Otherwise, they would not let me into Croatia.
Okay, and you're saying that's different in the UK, is it?
Absolutely.
Okay.
In the UK, we honour, in my opinion, wrongly so, the EU idea and precept of free movement of people. I think it's a flawed idea, it's a flawed principle, it should not...
So should there not be universal rules for every country then? Are you saying that the EU is inconsistent with the way in which it...
Well, the EU is not only inconsistent, I think the whole idea is flawed, because if you look at the economies, for example, in Poland and Romania and Bulgaria, they are not at par with the Western European economy. So obviously you always automatically go.
Yeah, but the theory is that if you go to another country and you vote, and Indian people do this as well, you know, but I know a lot of people who've come over from Poland and they send money back,
yes.
Right? And so therefore, from a European strategy perspective, Europe is getting stronger rather than actually being more selfish and saying the UK is getting stronger. So it's kind of an overall picture. So I mean, over here we see an article in, this is in the Independent, the shorter tabloidy type thing that they do, called I, and it says the PM EU migrants must wait 4 years to claim in-work benefits. I mean, that's it's a bit extreme, isn't it? I mean, you never know what your circumstances might be at the end of the day.
Well, look, I think the key is that people that are already here are working hard, and they're working very hard, despite the austerity that we unfortunately have had to face because of the huge deficit that the previous government left us with. Is it right that hard-working people here who are paying their tax and working hard to put food on the table for their children should subsidize people coming in from overseas or perhaps from Europe who may not have a guaranteed job placement here? But
I think we have to kind of, we'll move on to another topic, but not trying to get the last word in, but I would say that, there's a lot of, kind of from the Tories I see, or the previous government did that. But the thing is, even if the Tories were in power at the time, you have to remember that it was Gordon Brown who kind of took a stand and actually said, look, there's a global economic meltdown here. The banking crisis actually affected everyone, which actually dragged us into austerity, but maybe the UK did better out of it. We had a previous guest who said that maybe austerity is not the right strategy, that investment is.
Well, I think the proof is in the pudding, and that is that the UK economy is doing far, far better than perhaps France or Germany, who are stagnating, and they have not taken the same route that this government has as far as national economic policy is concerned, and that is why the UK is doing better, because we have a long-term economic plan. Look, what I would say, to sum it up, is that it's not about race, it's not about ethnicity, it's about resources. It's as simple as that. It's the economics of resources. Okay,
well, we'll let you have the last word on that one rather than me. Okay, so moving on to the next subject. So basically, we also saw this week a whole ton of violence, rioting, basically based on the judgment in Ferguson.
Yeah.
Now, for those who don't know, this is actually about the situation where a particular policeman has been found not guilty for shooting a black person. Now, you can read about it on the internet, you can read about it and see other news channels, but effectively, cities around the world have condemned it as well. They've said that, actually this doesn't look like human rights. And what I found the most amusing was looking at the papers from Iran and China saying, well, look at their track record in terms of, they're the ones who haven't necessarily got a great human rights track record, and they're making accusations about human rights and civil rights over in the US. Because we have an American president, is that a kind of a sign to say that, all the problems with black and white, brown and all the rest of it before are now over?
Look, I think having a black president in America is a huge step forward in terms of representative politics. But at the same time, things like the Ferguson incident still continue to occur. Even, I think just a few days ago we had another incident where a black teenager was shot despite not being armed. I think this has got a lot to do with the segregation. I think that still continues to exist in America in many places. I mean, we are very fortunate here in the UK that our communities are very, very cohesive and very integrated amongst each other. And I think that is something that is perhaps missing.
I'm not sure whether, I remember someone once saying, a politician once said there's a difference between integration and assimilation,
Yeah.
right? I mean, in terms of integration, when you shut the door at night time, like everybody else in the whole of the United Kingdom or in other places, you don't necessarily see your neighbours. You know, it's true integration, the fact that you're in and out of each other's lives.
Well, no, I think
the segregation still exists, doesn't it?
Well, it does exist, but it's a two-way street in a lot of the time. But I would still say that integration in the UK is better than America, and I'll tell you why it is better. Because
is it not reflective in the fact that if you look across the Parliament, kind of the spectrum of Parliament that we have out there, do we have enough representation from the communities that exist? Do we have enough brown faces, black faces, yellow faces?
No, we do not. Absolutely, we do not. We need more. I mean, I think a recent survey said there should be 18 Indian origin or Sikh or Punjabi MPs in Parliament looking at our demographics. We don't have enough.
But are these parliamentary groups actually playing it safe by putting people in saying, well, at least we're going through the motions and we're not actually, at least we did put some candidates forward, they were for a different colour other than white, or are we to believe the honesty of all the particular parties to say we really have a kind of, it's part of our agenda to be diverse?
Well, look, I think there's been a reluctance in all parties. There's no denying that. And there continues to be a reluctance, certainly at grassroots level, across all major political parties in terms of having ethnic origin candidates. I mean, I, as an ethnic minority candidate, have seen that firsthand. I will not deny that, yes, of course the Conservative Party has moved on, is moving forward at very fast speed in terms of having a more representative political establishment, but there are challenges. I mean, I've had an uphill struggle myself, but at the same time there's been a lot of support and a lot of cohesive action from all parts of the party.
We'll see what happens. I mean, let's move on to the next part. We're saying that we see that, again, there's been gun battles between the troops on either side, Pakistan and as well as Indian border. I think up to 10 people have been killed in gun battles. I won't even say whether they're Pakistani or Indian. A person is a person and
Absolutely.
they die, right?
Absolutely.
The thing is, this is a land dispute, right?
Yeah.
It's been going on for a long time. Are we ever going to get to a conclusion where they're going to stop fighting?
Well, I think certainly as far as there's no stability and peace in Pakistan itself, and no respect for democracy and the rule of law.
And minorities?
And minorities, of course. I mean, look at the way, for example, the infidel jizya tax is being imposed on Sikhs and Hindus and Christians in Northwest Frontier. Sikh people have been executed in Peshawar and surrounding areas for not wanting to pay that ridiculous infidel tax. It's a very dire situation. Churches have been bombed and the state has done nothing about it. Just recently we had a case of Pakistan's largest media network, that their CEO being jailed for 26 years for what? For blasphemy. That is the ridiculousness that Pakistan is today. And I think until we have stability, freedom and democracy and the rule of law and respect for minorities in Pakistan,
But you could argue that the government of India is actually a Hindu-dominated government which is, uses that as its ticket to get into power.
Well, look, I think perhaps in the past...
It's a nationalist Hindu campaign, I think it is.
Well, I think in the previously in the past that has been absolutely true. But I think this time, with the majority that this government has got, the BJP government has got, I think it is a far bigger mandate for the first time in 30 years. So I think it's not just Hindus that have voted for this government, but many other minorities as well.
They did, yes, that's right.
Otherwise, they would not have got the majority mandate that they have. But I think moving on, I think the only solution going forward is reconciliation, is making sure that the extremists that continue to infiltrate across the border and create this mayhem.
He was saying to me just before we started the programme, you were talking about the fact that there's
yes, Al-Qaeda.
Yeah.
Well, a few months ago we had an announcement from Ayman al-Zawahiri, the de facto head of Al-Qaeda, that he was announcing and setting up an Al-Qaeda in the Indian subcontinent wing for activities within India itself. I think that's a very catastrophic outlook that has been presented. But again, all that will do is create divisions between society, between communities, and of course add more tension to Jammu and Kashmir. I think the only way forward, the real sensible way forward, is a reunification of Jammu and Kashmir.
Yeah, interesting that nobody ever talks about the reunification maybe of India. You know, is that an extreme way of looking at it?
Well, I've been saying that for the last few years, that we should have an Akhand Bharat.
And maybe they need to also sort out the borders that seem to be being chopped down in Punjab, and the original Punjab that was there, and now it's shrunk completely. Absolutely.
Well, we've had the creation of Haryana, we had the creation of Delhi from Punjab and Himachal Pradesh. I think we should go back to having a big Punjab.
Wasn't it at Maharaja Ranjit Singh time they went all the way down to kind of to Delhi?
Yeah, absolutely, including that. Delhi was a big part of that Punjab that we saw then. I think if we went back to that, would be great. But I think going back to Jammu and Kashmir, if we can reunify it, we can have, I mean, look at the Kashmiri Pandits, for example. 700,000 have had to flee Kashmir because of the persecution they have faced at the hands of militants. That is unacceptable. Is it
unacceptable? Well, I really appreciate that. Well, let's move on to the next one. We actually sometimes look at what's happening in the UK.
Yes.
I have to make an announcement that I am actually going to be appearing as an artist at Saffron Mic 4, which takes place in Hounslow's Paul Robson Theatre. I strongly recommend you go to the Eventbrite website and register. We've got a poster up for it, and they've got a wonderful exhibition before that, which is free, between 4 and 6, and the actual event, which is paid for, actually starts at 6 p.m. And they have film, poetry, music, and this year's theme, as it's the 30th anniversary, sadly, of the pogroms in Delhi, as well as the awful situation in Amritsar.
Absolutely.
This year's theme is Shatter the Illusion. Also, I know, hot off the press, you on Friday morning went to Gravesend because there's an 8-foot-high bronze statue of a turbaned Sikh soldier. And his name is Amandeep Singh Puji, right? DFC. Now, I wanted to ask your view on this, because do you think this is a representation of UK or just international in terms of, the fact that, a lot of people from India came to the West to fight during that period?
Well, look, I think I was there this morning, and it was a great moment, an epic moment, I would say. And it made me so proud of being a Sikh, of being Punjabi. And I'm a squadron leader, Mahinder.
Oh, that's an honor. So you say Sikh and Punjabi, because I actually think they're different, aren't they?
Well, they are different, I think, because we can have Muslim Punjabis, we can have Hindu Punjabis, so there is that difference.
Right.
But
you just happen to be a Sikh who was also a Punjabi as well.
Absolutely.
You could be a Sikh who lives in the UK.
Absolutely. You can be a British Sikh.
Yeah, that's right.
You can be a Maharashtrian Sikh if you're from Nanded.
All right, we digress. So moving on to that. So tell me, well, how did you feel? You said you felt very proud as a Sikh, and you're a Punjabi as well.
Absolutely. I mean, I think it was an epic moment. We had nearly 200 people that turned up. The Mayor of Gravesham inaugurated it and unveiled the statue, and we had a number of representatives from the armed forces. The local MP, Adam Holloway, was there, and of course the statue itself. I think it's a symbol not just of the great squadron leader Mahinder Singh himself, but also of the larger contribution of the Sikhs to defend freedom, peace and democracy over the last 150 years.
So how many people from the national press were there in terms of... did they feel it was an important thing for them to cover, or was it just local ethnic press that were covering it?
Well, I will say I think there was some of the regional national press that was present. But what I would go back to say is that I think it was more representative of the larger contribution of Sikhs. I mean, I would say that, look, our great-grandfathers, they came forward to protect this nation and the values it enshrines. Our grandfathers, of course, came to rebuild it.
I wonder if, I was talking to a mutual friend of ours the other day, and he was saying that when you have the Poppy Remembrance Sunday morning, right? I mean, how many people from the Gurdwara go there? You know? Because it's open to everyone, isn't it? Wouldn't that be a really great thing that you wouldn't just see white people there, you'd see people from all different backgrounds at that 9 o'clock event when they actually are silent. I think it's 11 o'clock.
11 o'clock,
when they are silent for 2 minutes, you know? It's quite interesting. I was doing some work at another company at 11 o'clock, somebody was on the phone, although they had a 2-minute silence, and I thought, such disrespect.
Absolutely, absolutely. I mean, look, let's face it. India at that time gave the largest voluntary army. Most of them were Sikhs. 75,000 of us made the ultimate sacrifice, and if we can't be bothered enough to remember them, then, well, I think shame on those who don't. And it falls upon our shoulders, I think, as the leading media of the Sikhs in Britain, to remind people that, look, this is...
At least we filmed it.
At least we feel, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. At least we can talk about it. We can do shows like this to say, you know, it's important.
I think it's incredibly important that we raise awareness of such things, because, hey, if we don't remember our past, then how can we make history?
Absolutely. And I also believe, and this, I don't know if I made this one up, but if you don't tell your story, somebody else will tell your story for you.
Absolutely. And then
then it'll be lost. Okay, well, that's the final part of the show. We're going to talk about something to be extremely thankful for. I mean, Thursday in the United States was Thanksgiving Day, which happened to be, by coincidence, the same day as the martyrdom of Guru Tegh Bahadur. Now, you know, I was reading up about Guru Tegh Bahadur, and I saw that you know, he founded a city that his son eventually, Guru Gobind Singh, he renamed it as Anandpur Sahib.
Yep.
If you look, that, you know, he travelled extensively through India. He sacrificed his own life.
Absolutely.
We know that, for the freedom of others.
Yep.
He contributed 115 hymns of the Sri Guru Granth Sahib, all of them sloks, and his sloks, Mahalla 9, near the end of Guru Granth Sahib, are extremely popular.
Absolutely.
You know, what a great person. I mean, I didn't even talk about Guru Tegh Bahadur. It gives you tingles to think about such a great man, you know? Absolutely.
Well, I don't think the title given to Shri Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji was Hind the Chadar. I mean, he gave up, he martyred his own life for the sake of the Kashmiri Pandits again, who were at the beck and call and at the tip of the sword of Emperor Aurangzeb, one of the most horrible, catastrophic and disastrous emperors the world has ever seen. And as you said, you know, at that tender age, I think it was 8 or 9 years old, when Guru Gobind Singh Ji had to face up to the martyrdom of his father. I think, again, I think we're seeing that whole cycle repeat itself today, when we see ISIS beheading people and turning up the level of savagery that the world has ever seen, taking us back to those horrible days when Shri Guru Tegh Bahadur Ji were martyred in Chandni Chowk in Delhi.
There seems to be this real, like, I mean, I think you've used the right term. It's savagery, isn't it? You know,
absolutely.
I mean, the amount of savagery that was portrayed at that period.
That's right.
You know, and our gurus, you know, so many of our gurus gave their lives, and you know, Guru Gobind Singh, you know, we know not even if you haven't seen the film, but you know, if you know the stories,
absolutely.
And you know, it's well documented. All of his sons, you know, his mother, you know, and his father were, you know, people who gave their lives for the freedom of others. You know, and it's an incredible thing. It's very, very rare that you ever find, you know, such beautiful people that would put their lives down and give it up for humanity.
Well, look, I think
for the freedom of others.
Absolutely, you know? For the freedom of others, for the freedom of humanity.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, our first guru started the whole thing off with Nanak Naam Chardi Kala Tere Pane Sarabadda Pala. It's again asking for the well-being of the whole of humanity, and of course, the 9th guru continued that legacy, and the 10th guru has, of course, left us as Sikhs with an enormous legacy that I think no one else can.
And we have that great responsibility to be those humanitarians going forward, I think.
Absolutely, I think we do, and of course we got some very good people that are coming forward. I mean, this statue today, for example, it was the idea of a police constable who I think is working for the Metropolitan Police, Sardar Pal Singh. Again, a Amritdhari Sikh gentleman, and again he's fighting as a policeman. For the freedom of others, for the well-being of others, and that is the Sikh way.
It was so good to have you on the show.
Thank you.
Long awaited to have you, to book you, and it's really nice. And you know, we appreciate your efforts, your energy. We wish you the best luck in the future.
Thank you.
You are a qualified, approved
parliamentary
candidate for the Conservatives. But you know, wherever you go, you'll be standing for election. I hope you get in there and you know, you do well for whatever you do in terms of influencing future laws and things.
Absolutely. Well, look, I think my main motive has been that we need a more representative politics in this country. Only then can we continue to move forward the way we have.
And it's not easy to get actually selected, so you know, it's good that you've gone to that path. So that's it this time around. We hope you enjoy Media Watch. We come by every week, and we thank all the editors and staff in the background who make this show happen. So we'll see you next time, and enjoy your week. Waheguru Ji Ka Khalsa, Waheguru Ji Ki Fateh.